An applause, yay! A very small, quiet round of applause. And whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and begin.
6 months. That's how long any person has to go before they are legally able to drive. But if they have a seizure in that 6 months, they can't even attempt to get their driver's license. Now, I think for everyone in this room, that seems like a pretty easy thing to accomplish. But for my sister Keegan, it's not. She has to use certain communications in her family life, her friends, even at hospitals, to communicate with everyone. And while she's having a seizure, that can't always be verbal. My sister was born with spina bifida, which is a defect in her spinal cord, which basically there's a hole, an opening in it, and fluid can leak out of it, and she cannot walk, and she has no feeling from the waist down. This is how it's always been. She was, of course, born with this. So that part of her, illness isn't the big communication factor. It's the fact that in 2009, when we were on a family trip to Colorado, she actually had her first epileptic seizure. We didn't know that she had epilepsy at the time, but of course that was very frightening for everyone involved. Later that year and into 2010, we learned that she had epilepsy and learned that there was, of course, going to be a lot of steps that we needed to take to figure out what we needed to do for her. Everyone in my family and everyone around Keegan knows that she needs just a little bit of extra help. There's a lot of stuff that she can, of course, do on her own, but everything just kind of needs a little extra push. But that's not always easy in my family. As people pretty much know, my family is very busy all the time. Both my parents have full-time jobs. My sister is in college. She's a twin to Keegan, but she's away at college in New York. I'm in high school, 30 minutes out of town from Keegan, and Palmer, of course, is in grade school, not always the most help. My family, probably more than most families, have to use what Wood calls group communication. We have to, even not involving Keegan, I think we've learned a way to communicate with each other that works for us. One episode that Keegan had that sticks out in my mind to change our communication was not that long ago. It was a few years ago, and what happened during the epileptic seizure wasn't that different to usual, but the difference was the kids were home alone. My parents were, I don't know, at dinner or something, but they weren't home. Palmer, of course, was quite a bit younger than Kelsey and I, and as Wood calls it, he interprets what was happening very different than what Kelsey and I did. Well, Kelsey and I, of course, were very worried for Keegan because no matter how many times you go through it, it's still really scary. Palmer didn't even know what was going on. He couldn't really comprehend how to feel. So Kelsey and I had seen it before. We were ready, or ready-ish. Palmer was terrified. And Keegan gives us signs before and during her seizures as to what's going on. She gives verbal beforehand, but like I said earlier, during the seizure, she can't really give any verbal because she's not really responding to anything. So beforehand, she had a very stern look on her face, and one thing that Keegan does that the doctors say is different to most seizures is her hands kind of go in a very interesting and almost painful looking position, and that's kind of how we know immediately it's a seizure, it's not something else. So that's one nonverbal communication that Keegan uses to explain to us and to even the doctors what's going on. But while it was happening, Kelsey and I needed to communicate more than Keegan did for us. Kelsey and I needed to figure out what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And Kelsey and I have always had a really pretty good relationship with each other. We've communicated well, but this time it was different because it was so urgent, and it felt like both of us were doing what Wood calls mind reading. We were both trying to assume what the other person was going to do and how they were feeling about the situation. Whereas, it might have been completely wrong, and in some chances it was. We had to decide, exactly what to do and when to do it, and we had to do it fast. And we also had to take care of Palmer, who was kind of freaking out over there in the corner. So there was just a lot of stuff to do, and it was a scary time. Soon my parents did get home, and so we decided just to wait. She's had this before. It wasn't as, like I said, wasn't different to what it usually was. So we communicated with Kelsey, and I told our parents what had happened, and we decided just let it end. We can go to the doctor tomorrow. But afterwards, Palmer was still very shaken up. And Kelsey and I, as Wood calls it, we were able to empathize with him because we've both been through that. The first time Keegan had a seizure, I was 8, and Kelsey was, I think, 13. So we know exactly how he felt, and it was scary. Because of these communications, my family has been able to grow in a way that, like, we are able to communicate better in urgent situations and just all across the board. Keegan has developed a really strong relationship with both my parents, but especially my dad. She tends to, as Wood calls it, perceive what my mom is saying in kind of a wrong way, whereas if my mom's saying, Keegan, you have to take your medicine, Keegan takes it as, you're nagging me, stop. Whereas my dad kind of doesn't baby her, but spoils her a little bit more than my mom does. So, and my dad also is the one that's always with her from getting her places, because my mom's not always strong enough to get her to where she needs to go. Keegan has also always been stereotyped. People see her and they assume that she can't do everything that everyone else can because she's in a wheelchair, or that she has mental incapabilities just because she's in a wheelchair. But usually she's capable of doing pretty much anything we are, just in a different way, and she's still one of the smartest people I know. Keegan's social community, as Wood calls it, has also had to adapt a lot. Her friends, her teachers, everyone around her knows what's going on with Keegan, and they need to. Keegan has a service dog, my dog Vegas. She's not a registered service dog, but she's able to tell when Keegan is having these episodes before they actually happen. She also has a friend, Omeka, who comes to her and she gives her meds and basically just communicates with her what she needs to do every time that it needs to be done. She also has an epilepsy bracelet, which is a symbol to everyone, as Wood calls it, that she has epilepsy and what to do in the chance that it does happen. That's to her friends that are around her when it happens, and even to doctors if they don't know Keegan all that well. Her teachers and her friends need to be prepared. So they see the bracelet and they know what to do, or they know Keegan and they've been told what to do. Overall, communication has changed because of Keegan, for things not even involving her. We are able to communicate all the time, just better, because of what we've done. And whether it's Keegan's friends, the family, the doctors, and just overall, we all tend to communicate a lot better because Keegan has helped us.
Thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause. Thank you very much, Karson. And